Well, welcome everyone. I'm excited to bring you Adirondack Wilderness Advocates' fourth webinar in our Wilderness webinar series. So the Adirondack Wilderness Advocates is dedicated to promoting the knowledge, enjoyment, expansion, and protection of the Adirondack Park's wildest places. My name's Kayla White. I am the board chair of AWA. And I'm also the stewardship manager for the Adirondack Mountain Club. So I run the Adirondack High Peak Summit Stewardship Program, Hurricane Fire Tower Stewardship Program, and do a lot of work with educating other stewardship training, all that sort of stuff. I'm also on the board of the Waterman Fund. So today I'm gonna talk to you about stewardship within the Adirondack Park. And if this looks a little bit different from when we had the webinar live, it's because we had some technical difficulties, unfortunately, and weren't able to record. And so I'm going to give you this presentation again so we can put it on our website and social media. Unfortunately, we won't have the really great questions that was asked during our live presentation, but hope you enjoy. So I'm going to talk to you about the need for stewardship in the park, the tools that stewards use to educate the public, and the different stewardship groups that are doing amazing work. So yeah, I like to start with a definition of stewardship. So Merriam-Webster defines stewardship as the careful and responsible management of something entrusted to one's care. So when we think about stewardship, stewardship is the active protection of public lands, waters, and ecosystems. It is an action. When we are good stewards, we are doing something. But I think most important, it's educational. So we're teaching other people how to be good stewards of the land. So if people don't know how to do the right thing when they're out recreating on public land, then how can they be good stewards? So I think that education is one of the most important components. So why the need for stewardship? So when we're thinking about our relationship to the natural world, we need to be cognizant of the fact of how our actions have impacts on the land. When we get out and recreate, we create some sort of an impact with, we interact with different surfaces. We can't levitate over the trail. We might have to use the bathroom while we're out. And so it's really important that we are mitigating those unavoidable impacts, the impacts that just occur because we're out recreating, and just do away with those avoidable impacts altogether. It's also important to remember that it's not just our impacts, but everyone else out recreating as well. It's really all about cumulative impacts. It's the thousands of people who have come before you and the thousands of people who are going to come after you. And so visitation is high. So this is from the Leave No Trace Center for Outdoor Ethics. It's the annual visits to public lands across the United States. As you could see, the highest is the state park system, and the Adirondack Park is part of the state park system, with 792 million visits a year. That's over double the US population. So a lot of people getting out, recreating on public lands. I do like to share this. This is the average visitor for per day for Mount Marcy and Algonquin Peak in July and August. So this is from the High Peaks, the Adirondack High Peak Summit Stewardship Program. It is a really nice complete data set, and it does mimic the trends that we see at the trailheads in the High Peaks Wilderness area. So as you can see, we have had this huge increase in recreational use in the last decade and a half. And so the kinds of outdoor recreational impacts that can occur is we can have negative impacts to wildlife, vegetation, water, soil, cultural impacts, and social. And why do people cause impacts? So sometimes it's because they're unskilled, because they don't know how to dig a cat hole to bury their human waste, or they don't know how to properly do a bear hang. And so they don't have the skills to do the right thing. Sometimes they're uninformed, you don't know what you don't know. And or sometimes you get bad information. So sometimes you do the wrong thing because you don't know what the right thing is. Sometimes people are just careless in their actions. They're not thinking about how what they're doing is negatively impacting the environment. And they can also be unintentional, and their impacts can be unintentional. So it's like when a big gust of wind comes and takes that wrapper away. You didn't mean to leave it behind, but something happens to cause that. It was unintentional. So we have all these impacts that can occur on public land. So what are the tools that summit stewards, or stewards in general, are using to educate the public to protect wild places? How do they do it? So one is consistent messaging. So a lot of stewardship groups use the 7 principles of Leave No Trace. So the Leave No Trace Center for Outdoor Ethics, it's a nonprofit. Their mission is to protect the outdoors by teaching and inspiring people to enjoy it responsibly. They do this by delivering cutting-edge education and research to millions of people every year. So these principles are a framework of minimal impact practices for anyone visiting the outdoors. So what's great about Leave No Trace is that it is applicable to everywhere: wilderness settings, your backyard, your local park, and it can be applied to pretty much every recreational activity for the most part. And so that is why it is so effective. If you go across the United States and you go to public lands, you're going to see the same messaging. And so that's also what makes it very powerful, is that you go to a national park, you're going to see messaging on Leave No Trace. And so having that repetition really helps stick in people's mind, makes them more likely to follow these principles. Another technique that stewards use is informal interpretation. So I do want to give a definition of interpretation. So interpretation is a communication process that forges emotional and intellectual connections between the interests of the audience and the meanings inherent in the resource. So that's from the National Association for Interpretation. So when we're doing interpretation, we're doing an informal interpretation. So really, we're having a conversation with people. We introduce ourselves, we build rapport, and we ask them questions to gauge their knowledge on the topic that we're speaking about. And we're crafting our message, so hopefully that it's interesting and engaging for the public. And really what that comes down to is we're telling a story. We're telling a story to change hearts and minds that will then hopefully change their behavior. And so here is authority of the resource technique. It is another technique that stewards use. Because a lot of stewardship groups, um, they are not DEC or the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation staff. Um, they are not the authority of the agency, right? When we think of DEC, a lot of times we think of forest rangers. Um, they are the ones out there writing tickets. We think when we think of authority of the agency, we think of cops, the laws and regulations, those sorts of things. You know, really with stewardship groups is they don't have that authority of the agency. And so instead we use the authority of the resource technique when we see someone doing something less than leave no trace. And so I have a video about it to share with you all.
Hi, my name is Kayla, Stewardship Manager for the Adirondack Mountain Club. And today we're going to talk about authority of the resource. Have you ever hiked, paddled, or skied out to your favorite outdoor destination for a little R&R, only to come across someone leaving an impact or being less than leave no trace? How did you react? For some of us, our first reaction might have been to yell at them for disturbing such a special place. For others, we may have muttered under our breath, someone should do something about this. Neither approach is effective in changing their behavior. Thankfully, there's a special communication technique just for this sort of situation called the authority of the resource technique, or ART for short. Merriam-Webster defines authority as power to influence or command thought, opinion, or behavior. Often we think of authority in terms of an agency that wields it, the police officer pulling you over for speeding, or the ranger inquiring whether you have a bear canister. Yet nature has an innate power, an authority all of its own. As recreationalists, we experience this power firsthand. It's part of the draw that brings us to wild places. Nature has its own rules, and there are consequences when we break those rules. Based on these concepts, the authority of the resource technique is a communication tool we can all use to help recreationalists change their behavior and instill an outdoor ethic. When we make an appeal based on the power of wild places and give a clear explanation of the effect of their actions, visitors are more likely to make choices that leave less of an impact. In order to effectively intercede when observing someone leaving an impact, it's important to think about motivation. Those who are visiting do so because they feel there is something special about those wild places. They don't want to cause harm. Largely those who cause impacts do so because they are unskilled, uninformed, careless, or unintentional in their actions. In such cases, if we can clearly explain the impacts and help them understand the preferred alternative, we're likely to be successful. And here are 4 steps to using this technique.
Whoa, you get such a great view from here.
First, start with small talk. It's important to remember we're all enjoying a beautiful place together, which means we start from common ground.
Hi, how's it going today?
I'm good, how are you?
Good. My name's Kayla, I'm a Summit Steward. What's your name?
My name's Bobby. What's a
Awesome.
Summit Steward?
Summit Steward, well, we're up here to educate hikers about alpine plants. Have you ever been to a high peak before?
Just a couple.
A couple? Okay, awesome. Have you ever gone above tree line and entered the alpine ecosystem?
Yep.
Okay, cool, nice. Have you met a Summit Steward before?
No.
No? Okay, cool, very nice.
Then, give an objective description of the behavior.
Well, we're here to protect alpine plants, so I've noticed that a lot of people have been going off trail today.
Next, describe the consequences of that impact.
And when you go off trail and step on alpine plants, it can actually kill them. This is pretty fragile ecosystems.
Finally, offer an alternative if possible.
So
Oh.
it's always important to stick to bare rock while you are up here to protect this special ecosystem.
So is this an alpine plant then?
It is, yeah, so it's the grasses, mosses, shrubs, everything you see up here. As long as you're on bare rock, you're good to go.
Okay.
Awesome.
Try my best.
That sounds great. And if you have any questions while you're up here, just let me know.
Sure. You want
Awesome.
to take my picture?
Sure.
Here's another example at full speed.
Hi there, how's it going today?
Good, how you doing?
Good, I'm one of EDK's trailhead stewards. Looks like you're getting ready for a hike. Any questions you have?
No, I'm just heading up to Algonquin real quick.
Okay, awesome. You should get some pretty great views up there with how sunny it is.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Well, oh man, a lot of apple cores on the ground out here today. It's kind of a shame with there being garbage cans right over at the information center there.
Weird.
Yeah, would hate to see it attract any wildlife and maybe become habituated or, with how long apple cores might stay around on the ground, not the most pleasant thing to look at.
Okay, they don't just like disappear?
No, it takes a really long time. It could be 2 years before an apple core fully goes away. So if you see any and you're on the trail and got extra room in your pack, maybe bring them with you to throw them out at the garbage at the trailhead.
Okay, yeah, really great to know. Thanks.
Yeah, have a fun hike.
Awesome.
It's a straightforward technique applicable to any natural setting and any impact, and it works. Some Steward like me use this technique all day, every day to change visitor behavior, and we've seen huge improvements in the health of the Alpine Zone since the program was founded in 1989. But simple doesn't necessarily mean easy. These conversations are awkward and take practice. It requires a strong understanding of the why behind a leave no trace principle or regulation, meaning that you need to be well informed before you approach someone. Here are some tips in order to maximize your impact when using authority of the resource technique. One, attitude is critically important. Be confident and positive, but remember that no one likes to be told what to do. 2, use body language to your advantage. Standing shoulder to shoulder communicates to the other person that you're on the same side. Standing face to face suggests conflict. 3, you may not see immediate behavior change, and that's okay. Largely by the time we're interjecting ourselves, the impact has already occurred, so we're really trying to change behavior for the next time. 4, authority of the resource technique doesn't work in all situations. Some impacts are caused by willful behavior, and in those circumstances, authority of the agency, such as law enforcement personnel, is most effective. The authority of the resource technique is a powerful tool for encouraging behavioral changes in a positive way. The next time you find yourself in that beautiful place, gritting your teeth over someone else's behavior, take a deep breath, look around you, and give authority of the resource a try. After all, if not you, then who?
Thank you for that. And I wanted to play the whole video because this is a really amazing technique for anyone to use. I think it's really applicable to situations when you're just out recreating, and I use it when I'm not even in uniform. So I did want to share that with you all. So next I do want to talk to you about the different kinds of stewardship groups that are doing awesome.
The authority of the resource
awesome
technique
work.
can
Sorry about that. About awesome work in the park. So
also
let's
be used
see if I can do next. Where's it? Wants to keep playing, doesn't it? Okay, stop it. There we go. Finally, next slide. So the first stewardship, the kind of stewardship I want to talk about is trailhead stewardship. So trailhead stewardship really broadly educates on leave no trace messaging and the rules and regulations of the area. And really when we think about leave no trace, that is the why behind rules and regulations. They do focus on plan ahead and prepare. It's the first principle. And if you follow that principle, all the other regulations, all the other principles fall into place. And when you're educating at the trailhead, you just have this tiny window. People get out of the car, they want to quickly hit the trail. They're excited to go on their adventure. And so you have to make a quick judgment on what are the top 2 to 3 things that this person should know, and so you look, maybe they have a big heavy pack, it looks like they're camping, and so you think, okay, well, I'm going to want to talk to this person about how they're storing their food and maybe the designated campsites that they can camp at as they go out there. Or maybe they have a really tiny bag and you ask them where they're going and they say they're going to do this huge huge hike for the day, making sure that they have enough food and water and gear so that they can be safe and have a good time while they're recreating. We'll say three of the most common reasons for search and rescues. One is lower leg injury, and it's because people trip and fall. That could really that could really happen to anyone. Anyone can slip and hurt themselves. But really these next two reasons are pretty preventable. So one is not having a proper light source, and people are out longer than they think they are. All of a sudden it's dark in the woods, and they don't have any way to see, or they start using their cell phone, which is not a proper light source. It will quickly die. Another reason is you're in a group and the group gets separated. That's because sometimes groups aren't stopping at every trail junction, which is something you're supposed to do. Make sure you're staying together as a group. What usually happens is people go on ahead, and then someone takes a wrong turn at a junction, and maybe only one or two people have a map or know where they're going. And so then that individual or that part of the group is lost. So again, those are things that are easily preventable that trailhead stewards can educate about. We also want to give, as a steward, we want to give objective information, which means that information is true for everyone. It is nice that when you're at a trailhead educating and it's an out and back, just because you not only have that first opportunity to educate, but you have two. And a lot of times when people come back, they're a lot more willing to kind of chat you up and reflect on how that experience went. So you can talk to them about, oh, did you get the experience you were looking for? Was that maybe too hard or too easy? And you can give recommendations for next time, or talk about what went wrong and how they can fix that for the future. So the organizations that are doing trailhead stewardship in the park, and I apologize if I've missed anyone with these lists. There are stewardship groups that are new ones that are coming up. And so again, I apologize if I missed anyone, but we have the Adirondack Mountain Club, Adirondack 46ers, Town of Keene, the DEC, and the All Sable Club. And so trailhead stewardship is a mixture of volunteers and paid staff. I'd say probably the majority of them are volunteers. The Adirondack 46ers has the most trailhead stewards. With COVID, the numbers have been kind of wonky, but they usually have 50 plus returning stewards and 30 plus new stewards. And when you're running a stewardship group through volunteers, it's always really important to have returning volunteers and new volunteers. Because new volunteers, they're super excited. They want to sign up for all of the openings, which is like really, really great. But then you have returning volunteers who've been, they have those skills and knowledge, and they're very dependable. And so you kind of need that mixture of both to sustain the program. Next, I want to talk to you about fire tower stewardship. So this is a little different in that we're interpreting the cultural history of fire towers in the forest preserve. So that history really has to do with forest fires. So in the late 1800s, early 1900s, there was logging practices that created an environment for fires to spread quickly. So what they do is they would clear cut, they would leave these logs, and because you didn't have the moisture from the forest, it would dry out in the sun. And so when a fire would start from maybe a railroad spark or from a campfire gone awry, that fire would just spread throughout the landscape. And so in the early 1900s, they started putting fire observers on summits, and they built these fire towers. And so those fire observers, they protected the forest preserve. They lived and worked in the backcountry. A lot of times there were cabins where they would live with their family. There was telephone wire from the tower down to the bottom, so that when they saw a fire, they could call it in. And so kind of the message that I like to give as a fire tower steward is that these fire observers, they protected the forest preserve. And really now it's our turn to do so through responsible recreation. Also, this was a really amazing, the preservation of the fire tower itself is a really amazing thing to educate about too, because it took local citizen action to repair these fire towers and preserve this history. I will say that it is easier to educate on the summit. So you have a captive audience. So whether you're a fire tower steward or a summit steward, they work really hard. They want to relax, enjoy the view, take a breath. And when thinking about that, you have to think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And so it's a theory from Abraham Maslow. The basics is that when our basic needs are met, like food, water, shelter, bathroom, those sorts of things, when those needs are met, then we can do higher learning. But if those basic things are not met, we can't really think about the message that the steward is trying to relay. So as a steward, how can you help people meet those basic needs? You can give them time to take care of them, right? You can give them time to rest, to eat, to drink, to put on layers if it's cold. But you can also help them with those needs. So you can show them how to get out of the wind, that sort of thing. And so the places where fire tower stewardship is happening: Hurricane, Azure, Pokemoonshine, St. Regis, Blue Mountain, Mount Arab, Hadley, and Stillwater. A lot of the stewardship is done by friends groups of these places. It's a mixture of paid staff and volunteers. And sometimes they also partner with other organizations or colleges. So Friends of Hurricane partnered with the Adirondack Mountain Club for us to do educational stewardship up there. So next, I'm going to talk about watershed stewards. So they are really focused on aquatic invasive species. So they educate the boating public on invasive species. They use this message of clean, drain, dry, those principles, and they help inspect and decontaminate watercrafts and gear and record data. So while they are depending on the boating public to allow them to inspect and educate them, I will say they have a very high compliance rate, which is like really exciting. It speaks to the message getting out, and that the fact that people are they're willing to do the right thing. They want to do the right thing. They just need to know what it is. I think the Adirondack Watershed Institute said that they get like compliance that's like in the high 90s, I think around 98% compliance, which is really great. And the reasons why they're not complying is usually because it's their first launch of the year, or they're always launching their boat in just the same water body. And so the watershed stewardship groups, they're doing great work other than AWI is Lake Champlain Basin Program, Sable River Association, Protect the Adirondacks, Brant Lake Association, Canada Lake Conservation Association, East Shore Scroon Lake Association, and Town of Hornicon. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. Scroon Lake Association and the Lake George Park Commission. So a lot of groups are doing this work, but I will say Adirondack Watershed Institute, they have the most stewards. They have over 100 watershed stewards. They have 56 boat inspections and 29 decontamination stations across and surrounding the park. And if you think that high use is just for the hiking public, that is not the case. So AWI found that in 2020 that they saw a 25% increase in boats and boaters compared to the prior 3 years. But despite this large increase, they found fewer aquatic invasive species on boats, and the percentage of boats found to be carrying aquatic invasive species declined significantly over the last 3 years. And again, that's just from the really great messaging that they are doing across the park. And all these other amazing organizations are doing as well. So I did want to mention briefly stewardship on private land. A lot of these private organizations, that have private land have public easements, so they are open to the public, and they're doing an array of stewardship work. So there's a Lake Placid Land Conservancy, Adirondack chapter of the Nature Conservancy, Adirondack Land Trust, Champlain Area Trails. So they're doing invasive species work. They are doing trail work to make their trails more accessible. They're doing education, whether that is through passive education through like signage, or they do programming. They do watershed work. It's a little bit different stewardship, but I did want to throw them in because they're doing great work as well. And last but not least is alpine stewardship. There is only one program doing that work in New York State, and that's the Adirondack High Peak Summit Stewardship Program, the work that I do with my amazing staff. So this program is over 30 years old. It is a partnership program between the Adirondack Mountain Club, the Adirondack chapter of the Nature Conservancy, and the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. So this, I did want to save this for last because it is the gold standard. A lot of stewardship groups and programs in the park have used this program as their model. It is also seen as this high caliber, high quality stewardship program, an alpine stewardship program in the Northeast. We did model ours after the Green Mountain Club. Ours is similar to GMC. And our mission is to protect New York's alpine habitat through education, trail maintenance, and research. And we are very successful because of our threefold mission and because of the all of the training and oversight that we put into the program and how long it has been going on. So I do want to kind of quickly go through that three part of our mission. So first and foremost is public education. We are stationed during the summer on Mount Marcy and Algonquin Peak every day, and that has half of New York's alpine so that makes sense. We are on Right Peak 5 days a week, Cascade on the weekends, which is a lot of people's first high peak. And we visit Colden every other week for a couple of days. And so those are kind of like our 5 main ones, but we do visit all 21 summits that have alpine vegetation. And we're up there to educate, but also do trail work and research. We talk to every single person who comes up, and we educate them about the alpine ecosystem and enlist their help in protecting it by walking only on bare rock surfaces and staying off of soil, gravel, and vegetation. What we like to call is doing the rock walk. We have a mixture of paid staff and volunteers. This past year, we had 5 summit stewards, 1 photo point monitoring field tech doing research, and 30 volunteers. So the next goal is trail maintenance. So when we see damage to the alpine zone occur, we try and stem that damage. And a lot of our trail work is focused on delineating the trail, showing people where to go and keeping them off of the vegetation. So we will brush in herd paths where we don't want people to walk. We will build scree walls, which is like that line of rocks, that visual reminder to not go in that area. We will do rock packing, which you can see on the left, which is where if there's exposed soil, we put rocks in there to stabilize the soil. Plants will actually grow right over that to prevent that further erosion. And we also build and repair cairns, which is really helpful when visibility is low on the summits in the winter or when it's really cloudy. And the third goal is research. So we have a lot of long-term monitoring projects. Researchers, they want to partner with us because we're up there. We can collect data. So we work with the DEC on collecting data. We work with the New York Natural Heritage Program and different colleges to collect this data. And so we do focus on long-term monitoring. So a couple of those projects that we're working on is our alpine population study, which looks at the rare, threatened, and endangered alpine plants and how their populations are changing over time, which is really important when thinking about climate change. We're also doing our photo point monitoring research, and that was what we were focusing on this year, and what you can see in the picture. And what that has shown us is that the management actions that we put in place, such as different trail work or education that we do, has been very effective in the recovery of alpine vegetation. And I just want to show you what that looks like with pictures. So this is the summit of Mount Marcy, 1981. Camping was still legal at that time. This is what it looks like in 2015. So also the summit of Marcy looking back. This is 1992. And this is 2015. This is the backside of Algonquin. The guy in the short shorts is doing some revegetation work. And so that's 1971. This is 2011. And so the reasons that stewardship programs are successful is because of in-depth training, oversight, and also collaborations with other organizations. And I will say that these stewardship groups are partnered with the state, those that are working on public lands. They have to have their permission to do so. And the reason why DEC finds these stewardship groups, why they partner with them and work with them and give them permission, is because really what these stewardship groups are doing is helping to fulfill DEC's mission in educating the public and protecting the resource. The DEC does a lot to help make these programs successful. So I do want to give a shout out for that to them. They come and they educate different stewardship groups, talk to them about the forest preserve, different things that are going. And they're really great partners to have. We couldn't do this work without them, and the DEC wouldn't be able to accomplish their mission without these stewardship groups. I will also say that one good thing about the pandemic, if one could say that, is that it forced us to re-examine how we train our staff and our volunteers. And so the Adirondack Mountain Club was able to put their training online. And so we made kind of this online module with videos and different resources. And one good part about that is that we've been able to share our training. And normally we have a lot of different groups join the Summit Stewardship Programs training during the summer, fire tower stewards, and we help educate trailhead stewards and different things like that. And being able to share our online module has really made our training more accessible to more organizations, which has been really great. And so I do want to wrap up with what you can do to help. So you can be a good steward yourself, educate yourself and educate others. Remember, using authority of the resource technique is very effective. You can also get involved yourself. A lot of these programs depend on volunteers and depend on new volunteers. So consider joining one of your local stewardship groups. Also, a lot of these stewardship groups, I do struggle for funding. Even the successful and well-known ones struggle for funding every single year. So what you can do is also donate to support this great work. So thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this presentation. And if you have any questions or would like to know more about stewardship or would like to have access to our training modules, if you're a stewardship group yourself, please feel free to contact me. My email is for the Adirondack Mountain Club is Kayla, Kaylaw @adk.org. Again, that's Kaylaw @adk.org. Thank you so much for taking the time, and feel free to reach out. Have a great day.